the foundation that was being laid out to be bridged into something new, as we can all look around the world and we see that our current traditional banking system is no longer working. It's not just not working for the people, but it's not working for the 1%. So basically in 2021, I broke a story that went worldwide, global, from the World Bank, leveraging this technology for the new monetary system. Then in 2022, we broke the story from the IMF, the trust bridges as well. And next thing you know, we just kept connecting the dots to the UN and the Bank for International Settlements. It was really back in 2020, that's when I really took this stuff a little more serious. I used to own brick and mortar shops. I had 3 of them. When 2020 hit, for those who were paying attention, it became very clear what they were doing. It was planned out, 2020, to confiscate a dramatic sum of wealth from the middle class. They funneled $4.8 trillion from people like us, the middle class, up to the 1%ers. They locked down every mom and pop business, and you know how it is. Businesses can't afford to survive in this economy. They have to borrow more money. Interest rates were high at the time. So it became very clear what they were doing. They were resetting the monetary system. And that's when I said, okay, I have to get out of these brick and mortar businesses. I warned all my friends who had their shops next to mine as well. None of them listened to me. None of them believed me. And I showed them some facts too. Next thing you know, they're all buried in debt. I got out quickly. I sold my businesses to another investor. And I was able to take all that money and invest it directly into these core positions in technologies like XRP, XLM, HBAR, XDC, which we'll talk about shortly here in a bit. But overall, that decision changed my life. And it wasn't easy, but it became very clear that they were resetting the monetary system, and they had to use the pandemic not just to confiscate wealth, but also to give a reason to usher in the next generation to the digital economy. And as you can see, more and more people don't work in offices anymore. They work from their computers, including myself. I'm 24/7 on my computer. It wasn't like this before. So when we talk about blockchain, I think it's very important to be very clear when we're talking to newcomers and seasoned investors. There are 3 distinct components to every digital asset. The first thing is you have the crypto token. This is what people consistently talk about. This is the digital representation of value. It's what people see, it's what people trade, but that's only the surface of it. The second part is the blockchain. This is considered to be the accounting mechanism. So you think of it as a ledger where every transaction is actually documented and recorded with the transparency and immutability, okay? And then the third part, which I think is the most critical, is the protocol. The protocol sets the rules, the logic, and of course the insurance of compliance for the frameworks that already exist in today's financial system. And that's, by the way, what the financial institutions, what the central banks and the governments care about. This is what's going to integrate the traditional banking system into the digital economy. So when we start talking about blockchain, what are you really investing in when it comes to cryptocurrency? You're not just buying a digital asset, you're not buying a token, you're basically investing in the protocol and the blockchain infrastructure to which everything is going to operate on top of that. So the token is just really the digital representation of the ownership within that system. It's the code, it's the programmable code. That's the next phase of finance. Code is money, and everything is going digital. And we can dive in even deeper into that, but essentially that's what you're investing in. It's like investing into the internet before it became anything. John McAfee was somebody I used to listen to growing up, way before I got into crypto. And when John McAfee started talking about crypto in 2019, I would listen to 2018-19, I was listening to him, and he said something that caught my attention because the devil's in the detail. And he said once you put a blockchain protocol out there, like the XRP, right? You can't control it, you can't stop it. So what did they do? They used the Securities Exchange Commission to go after Ripple, the company behind the digital asset, which they couldn't control, in order to mislead people, to slow down the innovation, to slow down the awareness. And at the same time, they put smear campaigns behind it. At the same time, the very same institutions who were doing this were adopting the technology at the core of what they're doing. And they were building infrastructure around it to where they could control the rails around it. And that's where we go down the deeper rabbit hole about Ripple's relationship to the World Economic Forum, to the United Nations, to all the central banks. And the idea from this revolution was to get away from the central banks, but that's not happening. See, technology can free us or enslave us. We all understand that now. So they used the SEC and weaponized it, you could say, to regulate the digital infrastructure with enforcement. And that's where Gary Gensler played his role, Senator Warren, Maxine Waters, the World Economic Forum. We can go so deep down the rabbit hole here. But at the same time, they were adopting the technology because they knew it would get to a point, and this ties into our banking system today, our debt-based economy, that it was going to fail. Central banks were put into motion a long time ago, around 1913, which is unconstitutional, by the way, as private organizations, but it was designed to strip us of our wealth until the moment it was designed to collapse under the weight of its own debt. So we're at a point right now where a turning point, no pun intended. This is why I called the show The Turning Point from the Black Swan Capitalist, because two things are happening here. We're capitalizing on this black swan, the revolution of the banking system, but it's also a turning point because we have two routes this could go. The technology could really free us or it can enslave us, but that's why we need to raise awareness and wake people up to what's really happening here, because they're trying to control this system. And think about it. If you've heard the World Economic Forum saying this, their motto is own nothing and be happy, by definition, and I'm sorry to say this, I embrace the technology, but I look under the hood as well. And that's a tokenized economy. And this ties us into something called The Great Taking, written by David Webb. I've been trying to get him on my show for 2 years now. They've tried to silence him multiple times. Now, this guy, he wrote a very interesting book about how the Senate Banking Committee was putting laws and regulations into place since 2017 to confiscate and redefine what it means to own something, whether your money is in a bank, whether you bought an asset with dollars, because a dollar is a central bank liability. This is central bank money, it's not yours. So if you're buying something with money that's not yours, is this yours? So they were changing the laws, and that's how deep it went. When you look into tokenization now, it ties right into the conversation. So again, this could go in two different ways. And I mean, it's multidimensional and there's a lot of information. You've maybe heard me talk about this forever, but I mean, it's a lot of information to grasp, and I'm happy to try to break it down, but tokenization is the next critical one. First things first is decentralization. Decentralization, the technology can indeed be decentralized, but this is where it gets a little complicated. The first things first, you need a internet connection. Internet connection, it means they're monitoring your every movement. You need an IP address for that. That's not decentralized. But then the second thing is exchanges. They're selling this to people as decentralized, but when you have to go on the internet, which should be decentralized at this point, but it's not, and then you have to go through an exchange like Caleb and Brown, like Uphold, Coinbase. That is an arm for the bank, and that's why they have KYC, know your customer, right? So they already have all your data. And then if you want to exit into something hard assets, some cash, maybe even fiat currency, you have to go through a central authority, which is a bank. So the fact that they control the rails, the fact that they control the liquidity corridors, the fact that they control the on and off ramps and are putting this infrastructure in place, is it decentralized? You know what I mean? Because this infrastructure is being put into motion by the very same people who had the central banks at one point. And I'd like to reflect on some historical context too. It was Rockefeller, I believe, who said, I don't care who controls, who makes the laws as long as I get to control the money. And digital infrastructure without a digital constitution of human rights is something we should all be concerned about. And I understand that we're going to make a lot of money on this. We already have. But, you know, what's the trade-off, right? Are we trading off our complete anonymity where potentially these currencies can be programmable? And, you know, I get attacked by a lot of the people in my own community for this stuff, but I'm asking the right critical questions because it's necessary to do so. When people focus on most of the conflict, inflation, political chaos, the deeper game is actually unfolding quietly. If you look at the war that's happening now in the Middle East, for instance, wars are, you've heard the saying, I'm sure, every war is a central banker's war. But wars are used to justify more money printing, more rate cuts, more military-industrial complex spending, inflating asset prices away. But underneath all of it, if you actually look, this is not necessarily about borders and allies anymore. It's all about dissolving global debt. It's all about who's going to control the rails for the new financial system.